Chapter 1925, The Crows. Hotu continued to digest the words of the ancient being on the way. She vaguely felt that this must be crucial information that could change the fate of the entire Huashu kingdom, and even the entire 6 generations. However, after thinking about it for a long time, she still couldn't figure out what the important factor was. She lowered her head and asked the black dragon beneath her. "Black dragon, do you know what our ancestor meant?" The black dragon rolled his eyes, and a dull sound like thunder echoed. "How would I know? I've been away from this place for 700 years, and the old ancestor rarely talks to anyone. He may sleep for hundreds of years at a time." Hotua's heart trembled. Although she knew that the dragon clan was immortal and had a long lifespan, according to the black dragon, the old ancestor's lifespan was unimaginably long. Then how long has that ancestor lived? Black Dragon thought for a moment and said, "No one knows. All I know is that he has been around since I was born. According to my grandfather, when he was born, the old ancestor was already the old ancestor." Hotua's heart was filled with shock. However, after thinking about it, she felt that this should be reasonable. This was because the changes in mutants varied greatly. Although it had only been 3 years since the end of the world, the characteristics of the immortal species were not yet apparent. However, many humans who had undergone mutations also exhibited characteristics of immortality. For example, enhancement mutants had increased the strength of their cells to a terrifying degree, and as long as they did not die in battle, they would inevitably have a lifespan far exceeding that of ordinary humans. Not to mention that there were even more abnormal mutants with immortality attributes, who might live even longer. The Great Mutation Era will give birth to many beings that seemed like gods in the past. Those beings will become the gods of various countries' myths and legends. Hotu was unable to resolve the confusion in her heart, so she planned to return and find Meng Yuanjun and Shang Daowen to gather all of Xinjiang's think tanks to analyze the words left behind by their ancestors. If they could decipher them, then the Huashu kingdom would surely flourish. The sealed land under the demon's eye. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin used the principles of the mysterious gate formation and finally escaped from the mysterious gate formation. But they soon decided to enter the formation and rescue the other mutants. Ling had said that this place was extremely dangerous. Even the demon king Mammon, who was in a deep sleep, was not something the humans of today could deal with. So Zhang Yi naturally had to bring them out and share the risk. Under Yang Xinxin's guidance, he opened the dimensional gate and quickly shuttled into the formation. At this time, the other mutants trapped in the formation were facing an increasingly difficult situation. Those bronze pillars could not be destroyed. Even if some of them were knocked away, they would quickly reassemble and crash down on them in the most primitive way. However, such attacks posed a deadly threat to most of the mutants. Because only a small number of mutants were enhancement and beast type, most of them relied on their supernatural abilities to fight, and at this moment, they were in a desperate situation. Even top ability users like Olive and Odin had to temporarily hide behind their teammates. Standing in front of the crowd, the one who was contributing the most at this moment was Sharon from Columbia's Natural Science Association. This obscure ferryman of the underworld was over 2 meters tall and looked like a gentle iron tower. His fighting style was simple and violent. He would rush forward, his muscles bulging, his legs firmly planted in the water, and then he would suddenly exert force with both arms, forcefully holding up the bronze pillar that was falling from the sky. Bang! He held the bronze pillar tightly with both arms and threw it into the sky. There was a loud clang, and the bronze pillars flew away like bowling balls. Cardalus's body hovered in midair, with a pool of water beneath him. In the water, he was able to fully utilize his strength. His superhuman body and ability to control water allowed him to shoulder a large part of the pressure for everyone. Of course, the other mutant teams also had their share of meat shields. Working together, they fought for a long time without any casualties. This is more like a maze than an array. Even if there are no problems for now, we will eventually die from exhaustion. Odin's sharp eyes scanned the entire bronze formation. The bronze pillars were moving quickly, and there were no gaps for them to slip through. Their movements are regular, but there are too many bronze pillars. I need a lot of time to analyze their trajectories. Odibio said, there are tens of thousands of bronze pillars here, and the light is too poor to see clearly. But where did Chaos and the others go? They've been gone for a long time. Canelo spoke up suddenly. He was the only one among everyone who had been staring at Zhang Yi. Canelo had a special obsession with Zhang Yi. He regarded Zhang Yi as his idol, his rival, and someone he must surpass. The key was that he had seen Zhang Yi's cunning and powerful survival skills. Therefore, he was convinced that as long as he followed Zhang Yi, nothing would happen to him. Hearing Canelo's words, everyone else had no time to pay attention. They were all doing their best to find a way to break through, so who would care about what others were doing? Cardalus raised his eyebrows and looked at the dense, seemingly endless sea of bronze pillars around him, a wicked smile appearing on the corner of his mouth. Using space abilities to travel through a place like this is extremely dangerous. If you're not careful and fall into a gap, you'll be crushed by the bronze pillars. Chaos might be dead by now. As the Colombian Navy's most foul-mouthed soldier, his words always made people want to punch him. At this moment, Shadow Saladin, who had been in a state between 2 and 3 dimensions, spoke up. No, it won't. Chaos is the most cautious and intelligent mutant I've ever seen. He must be looking for a way out. In fact, shortly after Zhang Yi left, Saladin also set off. Being able to turn himself into a 2-dimensional form, it was easy for him to leave this place. After turning into a shadow, his movements were even more secretive and swift in the darkness, and the bronze pillars couldn't hurt him. He had planned to leave like this and find a way out first. However, after wandering through the bronze pillar forest for an unknown amount of time, he ended up back where he started. After repeating this cycle dozens of times, he finally realized that the bronze pillar array was not as simple as it seemed. If that guy really found a way out, will he leave us here? Asgard's Loki, Barrett Thomas, was a warlike little girl who carried a battle axe that was completely out of proportion to her size. She brutally knocked down the bronze pillars while raising this question. Everyone looked at each other, sharing the same concern. If they could leave this place, who would come back to take the risk? Heaven would not be so kind to just one person. But at this moment, Cardalus spoke up. If he finds a way out, he will definitely come back. Everyone was surprised. Judging from this guy's attitude towards Chaos, the two of them didn't have a very good relationship. Why was he suddenly speaking up for Chaos? Cardalus laughed fiercely. He's an extremely clever guy. He knows that it's difficult to survive on his own in such a dangerous place. So of course he has to bring us along. No matter how much he hated Zhang Yi, Cardalus recognized his strength. Just as he finished speaking, Zhang Yi's cold voice suddenly rang out from midair. You know me very well, don't you? Everyone hurriedly looked in the direction of the voice and saw a crack open in the void, from which Zhang Yi emerged. Everyone's eyes lit up, and Olive hurriedly asked, Chaos, did you find a way out? Zhang Yi nodded, I found it. Next, follow me and remember, you must keep up. There are too many people, and I can't guarantee that no one will fall behind. Take care of yourselves. If you're even one step behind, someone will die. Zhang Yi wasn't joking at all. This was also why he didn't take everyone with him earlier. Even though Yang Xinxin had spent a long time observing and analyzing it, she had figured out that it was a mysterious gate formation. But understanding it didn't mean she could break it. In such a dense and fast-moving formation of bronze pillars, one wrong step would definitely result in falling into the formation and being crushed by the bronze pillars. It could be said that this formation was a super-large meat grinder. There were hundreds of mutants at the scene, so it would be very difficult to lead such a team out. The crowd exchanged glances for a second and immediately replied, Okay, we will follow closely behind you. They had no other choice. Zhang Yi asked Yang Xinxin to arrange the route, which required her to constantly calculate the best route based on the changes in the mysterious gate formation. However, with Yang Xinxin's calculating ability, this was not a difficult task. The dimensional gate opened, and Zhang Yi said, Follow me as quickly as possible. Then he stepped into the dimensional gate. The hundreds of people behind him followed closely, not daring to fall behind. The dimensional gate opened and closed many times, and the entire team was like a long dragon. However, during this process, it was inevitable that some people would make mistakes. That's how it is when there are so many people. Those who fell behind fell into the bronze pillar array and let out a short cry before their bodies were immediately crushed into pieces. Some of the flesh even splattered onto their companions, which made the others shudder and become even more cautious, not daring to make the same mistake. Zhang Yi deliberately slowed down on this stretch of road, not wanting more people to die. Along the way, the huge bronze pillars around them made a rumbling sound, giving people a tremendous sense of oppression. One wrong step would mean death, so everyone was very careful. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they passed through the last shuffle, and the bronze pillars in front of them disappeared. Phew, phew. The surrounding space was quiet, but the sound of heavy breathing could be heard everywhere. Everyone had just had a brush with death. They turned back and looked at the huge bronze pillar array again, only to find that it was not as endless as they had imagined. It was just a special way of giving them the illusion that they could never escape. When everyone left, the bronze pillars slowly stopped rotating, then rumbling, sank to the bottom of the water pool. Soon, the surrounding space became quiet again. Someone tried to take 2 steps forward and probe the bottom of the pool, but it was flat and smooth, with no sign that a large number of bronze pillars had ever emerged from it. How mysterious. Someone muttered under their breath. It's so dangerous just after we entered. I wonder what the road ahead will be like. Someone said with emotion. They realized that this mission would inevitably be full of danger, and they didn't know how many people would die here. Even so, no one backed down. Where do we go next? Someone asked. At this moment, Sharon raised his hand. The drone has sent back information. In front of everyone, he opened a 3-dimensional projection screen with many small red dots flashing on it. The terrain here is vertical, and the whole thing looks like a long boot, with us in the middle. We can choose to go forward or backward. As for the areas further away, the signal can't reach them. There's a very special magnetic field here, which I think must come from the sealed demon king Mammon. Everyone exchanged glances again. Saladin walked up to Zhang Yi and suggested, since chaos led us through the first obstacle, I suggest we let him make the next decision. Saladin was a smart man. Although Zhang Yi hadn't had time to tell them that this place used the ancient mysterious gate formation of the Huashu kingdom, he instinctively realized something. However, Olive raised his hand and rejected the suggestion. This is a sealed place, we should ask someone who is an expert. He looked at Odibio, the chief of the Aoshi clan. Chief Odibio, please show us the way. Zhang Yi didn't say anything. He wanted to see if Odibio had any special abilities. As for him and Yang Xinxin, they didn't understand what connection this place had with the ancestors of the Huashu kingdom. It was best to wait and see what happened and let the professionals handle it. Odibio held the white bone scepter and walked to the center of the crowd, saying, as the Grand Shaman of the Aoshi clan, I can sense the evil aura of the demon god. As long as we follow this method, we will definitely be able to find his location and seal him away. He raised the white bone scepter high above his head, closed his eyes, and began chanting again. Tongue. 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 He shook his head like a madman, and a circular area suddenly burst into flames with him at the center. The flames were dark green. He chanted faster and faster, shaking his head and dancing around. The people of the Aoshi clan around him also began to beat out a rhythm. The dance became faster and faster, and the dark green flames grew more and more numerous. In a daze, Zhang Yi saw human heads in the flames, each with a fierce and terrifying face, as if they were suffering some kind of extreme pain. The most primitive way to inspire inspiration is through pain. Therefore, in ancient times, when making forbidden weapons, people would choose cruel methods to cut off certain parts of the human body. In this way, when the people were killed, their painful resentment would be sealed in the forbidden weapon, and powerful strength could be obtained. Zhang Yi had seen this in the southwest region. For example, the gates of eternal death, which were built with the bones and blood of more than 100,000 people, and the demon-subduing Vidra, which was used to seal King Nash. In the more primitive tribes of Phaeacia, it was likely that even more lives were sacrificed to make forbidden weapons, and the rituals were even more cruel. The wind blew, and all the flames fell in one direction. Odibio's movements stopped abruptly. He looked in that direction, stretched out a black finger, and said, "The evil power is in this direction." Zhang Yi tightened his grip on the blood-red demon's sword in his hand. This weapon, reforged from the Ichigar demon sword, made him feel much more secure. Get ready for battle. Danger could strike at any moment. Especially when we get closer to the area where Mammon is sealed. Zhang Yi said to everyone, subconsciously lowering his voice. Everyone nodded. Odibio's words made their tension and fear even more palpable. Kangda stood beside Zhang Yi and whispered to him, "Let's stay behind. I have a bad feeling about what's ahead." Zhang Yi glanced at him and smiled slightly. Isn't that inevitable? However, he still listened to Kangda and fell a few steps behind. As a close friend for many years, Kangda had always been like an older brother to him and had saved his life many times. Therefore, Zhang Yi respected Kangda's words. The group waded through the water, moving forward slowly but steadily. At the front of the group were the Knights Templar led by Olive. As the organizers of this operation, they had to take on this responsibility. The surroundings were vast and empty, and the marsh was silent, except for the sound of their footsteps splashing through the water. The almost empty space brought about an extreme sense of oppression. Suddenly, the Knights Templar at the front let out a low cry, "Back up! Enemies!" Everyone stopped in their tracks and immediately assumed a fighting stance. Zhang Yi looked ahead and was shocked to see 3 humanoid figures standing in the shadows. His pupils suddenly contracted, and a chill slowly crept up his neck. How is this possible? His pride and joy, the spiritual domain, which allowed him to detect everything around him, had failed to detect the presence of these 3 humanoid creatures. They stood silently in the darkness, holding stick-like weapons in their hands, as if they had suddenly emerged from the darkness. The others could only use the bat system to judge what was around them and could not see their full appearance. One of the Knights Templar raised his hand, and the supernatural energy in his palm gathered together, forming a thick book. God said, "Let there be light," and light illuminated the world. As soon as he finished speaking, the pages of the book turned without any wind and stopped at the page where God created the world and made light. In an instant, a bright light illuminated the space, revealing the true forms of the 3 humanoid creatures in the shadows. When they saw their appearance, everyone felt extremely uneasy, as if they had seen something physically repulsive and terrifying. They were cold, dark, and sticky. They were 3 humanoid soldiers wearing ancient armor, dark red conical hats, and holding weapons that looked like guns but weren't. The key point was that their heads were not human or human-like, but huge crow heads. 3 crow soldiers, with human bodies and crow heads, their black scales were like black iron, cold and terrifying. They didn't look special, but for some reason, they caused a deep fear in people's hearts. This is the uncanny valley effect, where humans feel fear when they see something non-human that looks very human. Netherwalkers. Odibio shouted in a deep voice. These are the followers of the demon god. The crowd recovered from their initial panic, and several Knights Templar rushed forward. One of the Knights Templar summoned a blazing flame from the palm of his hand, which turned into a raging inferno that engulfed the entire area in front of them in an instant. Hiss! A black shadow shot through the flames, splitting them in 2. The crow soldiers stared expressionlessly at everyone in front of them, raised their strange spears, and charged forward. 2 heavily armored Knights Templar wielded huge 2-handed swords and charged forward, slashing down with all their might. The crow soldiers swung their spears at lightning speed, sweeping sideways without dodging. In the blink of an eye, the 2 sides missed each other, and the bodies of the 2 Knights Templar were split in half, blood spurting everywhere. Keep in mind that these were all elite soldiers, each with an ability index of over 9,000. Yet they were killed instantly by the crow soldiers with a single strike. The crow soldiers' fighting style was very simple. They had no flashy supernatural abilities, but simply used the long spears in their hands to directly slay the two heavily armored warriors. Liang Yu emerged from the shadows and stood beside Zhang Yi, his eyes grave as he said, "These are masters." Although it was only one strike, Liang Yu could see at a glance that the three crow soldiers in front of him were mutants with highly skilled combat techniques. On the Aoshi clan's side, Ao Tsuntian stepped forward, roared, raised a black stick in his hand, and led his clan members forward. The three crow soldiers did not seem to notice the difference in numbers between the two sides and charged straight ahead, forming a battle formation in the shape of a triangle. Seeing the Aoshi clan rushing towards them, they immediately turned their guns to meet the attack. Ao Tsuntian roared, leaped into the air, and slammed the black iron stick down with both hands. The crow soldier at the front looked at him indifferently and quickly dodged, allowing the black iron stick to slam into the pool of water in front of him. Ao Tsuntian was a level black chariot mutant, and his powerful strike was enough to split mountains and rocks, but it only splashed water in the pool without causing any damage to the ground. The moment he fell, the crow soldier coldly raised his spear and aimed it at his head.